He thought speaking German would keep his insults safe, but he was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. The morning sun shone through the windows of Maya's Diner, a small family restaurant in downtown Atlanta. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air, mixing with the sound of sizzling eggs on the grill and the gentle chatter of early morning customers. Behind the counter, Keisha Williams moved fast between tables, taking orders and serving food with a warm smile that never seemed to fade, no matter how tired she was. She had been working since 6 a.m., her sneakers already showing signs of the long day ahead. It was only Tuesday, but this was already her 4th shift this week. Money was tight, tighter than she liked to admit. Her mother's medical bills kept piling up, and every dollar mattered. The tips from Maya's Diner weren't much, but they helped pay for her mother's medications and the rent on their small apartment across town. The diner was the kind of place where everyone knew your name and your usual order. Mrs. Johnson always got her coffee black with 2 sugars. Tommy from the construction site next door never needed to ask for his bacon and eggs. Over easy. The walls were covered with pictures of the neighborhood from decades past, showing how the area had changed over the years. Maya, the owner, had inherited the place from her grandmother and kept everything exactly the same, from the red vinyl booths to the black and white checkered floor. Most people didn't expect to see someone like Marcus Hoffman in a place like this. His expensive suit looked like it cost more than Keisha made in 3 months, maybe more. The fabric was perfectly pressed, not a wrinkle in sight. The gold watch on his wrist caught the light every time he moved, flashing like a beacon that announced his wealth to everyone around. He walked in like he owned the place, his leather shoes clicking against the floor with each confident step. Behind him, his assistant hurried to keep up, already talking rapidly on her phone in what sounded like German. Marcus scanned the room like he was evaluating whether it met his standards. His eyes moved over the simple decorations, the worn but clean tables, and the other customers with barely hidden disapproval. He chose a table by the window where the morning light would hit him just right, like he was posing for a magazine cover. He sat down without acknowledging anyone else in the room and immediately pulled out his phone, his fingers flying across the screen as he typed what looked like important messages. The diner wasn't fancy, but it was clean and friendly. The coffee was strong, the food was good, and the prices were fair. Regular customers knew everyone's name, and Maya treated her staff like family. It was the kind of place where people felt comfortable lingering over their morning coffee, reading the newspaper, or catching up with neighbors. Marcus looked completely out of place, like a diamond in a hardware store. His whole attitude said he thought he was better than everyone there, from the way he held his shoulders to the way his eyes avoided making contact with anyone. Keisha approached his table with her usual friendly smile, the one she had perfected over years of customer service. Even though she was tired from working double shifts and worried about her mother's upcoming doctor appointment, she never let it show. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Maya's. Can I start you with something to drink?" she asked politely, her notepad ready. Marcus barely looked up from his phone. His eyes flicked to her face for just a second before returning to his screen. "Still water? Bottled? Not tap?" he said coldly, like he was giving orders to a servant rather than asking a waitress for service. The way he said it made Keisha feel small, like she should be grateful he was even speaking to her. It wasn't necessarily a rude request, but his tone carried the weight of someone who was used to having people jump to fulfill his every wish. She nodded professionally and walked back toward the counter to get his water. Maya caught her eye from behind the grill and raised an eyebrow, a silent question about the new customer. Keisha just shrugged slightly. They had dealt with difficult customers before. A few minutes later, she returned with a cold bottle of water and a clean glass, placing both carefully in front of Marcus. "Here you go, sir," she said with the same warm smile. Marcus didn't say thank you. He didn't even acknowledge that she had brought him what he asked for. Instead, he twisted the cap off the water bottle, took a careful sip, and went right back to his phone like she had become invisible the moment she finished serving him. His assistant returned to the table, ending her phone call and immediately launching into a quiet conversation in German. The language sounded musical and formal, completely different from the casual English conversations happening at the other tables. Keisha was wiping down the table next to theirs when she heard them speaking. She paused for just a moment, recognizing the familiar sounds of the German language. She understood more than just a few words here and there. She had spent 3 years in Berlin during and after college, first as an exchange student and then working for a tech company that had sponsored her visa. Her German was fluent, polished by years of academic study and real-world practice. But she had learned long ago that sometimes it was better to let people think you didn't understand what they were saying. People revealed their true character when they thought no one was listening. The door opened, and an older man in an expensive suit walked in. He looked around like he was checking to make sure the place was good enough for him. Marcus stood up and greeted him in German, shaking his hand firmly. They sat down and started talking in low voices, but not low enough. In a small diner, sound travels easily. Keisha wasn't trying to listen, but she couldn't help hearing bits and pieces as she worked nearby.
Diese Kellnerin sieht aus, als wäre sie dankbar für jeden Job, Marcus said with a mean laugh.
Translation: This waitress looks like she should be grateful for any job. The older man chuckled uncomfortably. Keisha's hand tightened around the coffee pot she was holding, but she kept her face calm. She had learned not to react to every comment, but this one was different. This was personal. She walked back to their table with her notepad ready. "Are you gentlemen ready to order?" she asked pleasantly. Marcus barely glanced at her. "2 black coffees and whatever breakfast you have that's quick. We don't have much time." His tone was sharp and impatient. The older man smiled apologetically. "The pancakes sound good. Thank you." At least one of them had manners. As Keisha walked away, she heard Marcus continue in German.
Sie versteht sowieso nichts von dem, was wir besprechen.
Translation: She doesn't understand anything we're discussing anyway. That comment made her stomach twist with anger, not because it hurt her feelings, but because he was so confidently wrong. She had a degree from a German university. She had written papers in German and given presentations to professors who barely spoke English. But Marcus had no idea who he was really talking about. He saw a black waitress in a small diner and made assumptions. He thought speaking German made his words invisible to her. He was about to learn just how wrong he could be. Keisha poured their coffee carefully, her mind already working on how to respond. She wasn't going to let this slide, but timing was everything. She had learned that lesson well during her time in Germany. Keisha brought their breakfast plates to the table, setting them down gently. "Here you go, gentlemen. Let me know if you need anything else." Marcus didn't thank her. He just picked up his fork and started eating while continuing his German conversation. The older man at least nodded politely before joining back in. Their conversation got more interesting as they ate. Marcus started talking about money transfers, company names, and business deals. "Die Zahlen für das nächste Quartal sind beeindruckend," he said. Translation: The numbers for next quarter are impressive. Then he mentioned amounts that made Keisha's eyes widen. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions. This wasn't just casual business talk anymore.
Niemand hier würde das verstehen, selbst wenn sie zuhören würden,
Marcus added with that same arrogant tone. Translation: No one here would understand this, even if they were listening. He was getting more comfortable, more careless with his words. The older man looked around nervously, but Marcus just kept talking like he was in a private office instead of a public restaurant. Keisha refilled their coffee cups, staying close enough to hear more. They were discussing contracts, international, business, and names of companies she didn't recognize but could tell were important. Marcus's voice was full of pride as he talked about deals he had made and money he had earned. He clearly thought he was impressing the older man. But then he said something that made Keisha's decision for her. Diese Frau ist wahrscheinlich nicht einmal zur Schule gegangen, he said, gesturing toward her without looking. Translation: This woman probably didn't even go to school. That was the last straw. Keisha had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and overcome too many obstacles to let someone dismiss her education like that. She finished refilling their cups and walked back to the counter, but her mind was made up. It was time to show Marcus exactly who he was dealing with. Keisha waited for the right moment. She had learned patience from her professors in Germany, from dealing with difficult customers, and from years of people underestimating her. The diner was quieter now, with fewer customers around. Marcus and the older man were finishing their breakfast, still talking in German like they owned the place. Marcus made one final comment that sealed his fate. Es ist gut, dass sie nicht versteht, wie wenig ich von Leuten wie ihr halte. Translation: It's good that she doesn't understand how little I think of people like her. The older man looked uncomfortable now, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. But Marcus just laughed and took another sip of coffee. Keisha walked over to collect their empty plates. This was her moment. She had practiced what she wanted to say in her head, making sure every word would hit exactly where it needed to. She picked up Marcus's plate first, then looked directly at him with a calm smile. Es ist interessant, dass Sie über Bildung sprechen, Herr Hoffmann, wenn Sie nicht einmal bemerken, dass jemand jeden einzelnen Satz versteht, den Sie gesagt haben. Translation: It's interesting that you talk about education, Mr. Hoffman, when you don't even notice that someone understands every single sentence you've said. The fork in Marcus's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes shot up to meet hers, wide with shock. The older man's mouth fell open slightly. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. The only sound was the quiet hum of the coffee machine and the distant traffic outside. Marcus set down his fork slowly, his face going from surprise to something harder to read. You speak German? He stammered in English, like he was hoping he had misheard. Keisha continued in perfect German, her pronunciation clear and confident. Ich habe 3 Jahre in Berlin gelebt und dort studiert. Mein Abschluss ist von der Humboldt Universität, also wenn Sie denken, Ihre Worte sind sicher, weil sie nicht auf Englisch sind, liegen Sie falsch. Translation: I lived and studied in Berlin for 3 years. My degree is from Humboldt University. So if you think your words are safe because they're not in English, you're wrong. The silence in the diner was complete now. Even the other customers had stopped their conversations to watch what was happening. Marcus's face had gone pale, and sweat was starting to form on his forehead. The older man was staring at Keisha with a mixture of respect and embarrassment. Marcus tried to recover, switching back to English. Look, I think there might have been some misunderstanding. But Keisha wasn't finished. She continued in German, her voice steady but firm. Kein Missverständnis. Ich habe alles gehört, von den Bemerkungen über mich bis zu den Geschäftsgesprächen, die Sie wahrscheinlich nicht möchten, dass sie jemand anderes hört. Translation: No misunderstanding. I heard everything. From the remarks about me to the business discussions you probably don't want anyone else to hear. That hit home. Marcus's eyes darted around the diner, suddenly aware that other people might have been listening too. The older man leaned forward and whispered urgently, Marcus, we should go. But Marcus was still trying to save face. I'm sure you're very capable, he said, his voice shaking slightly. But this is all being blown out of proportion. Keisha switched back to English so everyone in the diner could understand her next words clearly. Mr. Hoffman, do you know why I work here? It's not because I can't do anything else. I came back from Germany to take care of my sick mother. I work double shifts to pay for her medical bills. I chose this job because it lets me be close to home when she needs me. She straightened up, looking him directly in the eyes. So when you look at me and see someone who should be grateful for any job, you're missing everything that matters. And when you assume I'm uneducated because I'm serving your coffee, you're not just wrong. You're showing exactly the kind of ignorance that makes people stop respecting men like you. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He reached for his wallet, throwing down money that was far more than the bill. "We should leave," he muttered to the older man. They stood up quickly, Marcus avoiding eye contact with everyone in the diner. As they headed for the door, Keisha called out in German one last time. "Nächstes Mal sollten Sie daran denken, dass Sie nie wissen, wer zuhört." Translation: Next time, you should remember that you never know who's listening. Marcus paused at the door for just a second, then walked out without looking back. The older man gave Keisha a respectful nod before following. As the door closed behind them, the diner erupted in quiet applause from the other customers who had been watching. Keisha smiled, not out of spite, but out of satisfaction. She had stood up for herself and shown that respect isn't optional. Whether Marcus learned anything from this experience was up to him, but she knew she had done the right thing. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show someone exactly how wrong their assumptions are, in whatever language they least expect you to know.